The Vel'karan Empire had conquered 47 star systems, subjugated 12 sentient species, and hadn't lost a major engagement in 3 centuries. Naturally, they were feeling pretty good about themselves. Their military doctrine was refined to an art form. Their weapons could crack planets like eggs, and their strategic planning division had enough computing power to simulate entire campaigns before breakfast. So when the High Command looked at Sol's system, home to a peculiar species called humans, and saw a treasure trove of water worlds, mineral-rich asteroids, and a frankly embarrassing lack of orbital defense stations, they did what any self-respecting galactic empire would do. They decided it would be easy. Earth had been classified as a Tier 3 species for the better part of 2 centuries. Tier 3 meant technologically adolescent, barely FTL capable, politically fragmented, and possessing all the galactic influence of a particularly ambitious mold colony. The humans had ventured out to their neighboring planets, established some mining operations, and then bizarrely seemed to just stop. They built a handful of generation ships that hadn't gone anywhere particularly impressive, established one minor colony on a moon orbiting their gas giant, and otherwise kept to themselves like cosmic homebodies. Intelligence reports suggested they were more interested in something called streaming services and artisanal coffee than galactic domination. Perfect targets, in other words. The High Command assigned the conquest to Admiral Fel'noth, a decorated officer with 17 successful campaigns under his belt and an ego that could be seen from orbit. Fel'noth accepted the assignment with the appropriate level of military gravitas, which is to say he mentally calculated how this easy victory would position him for a council seat, and immediately began drafting his triumphant speech. The invasion fleet assembled in the outer reaches, 200 warships each capable of reducing a continent to molten slag, 50 troop carriers packed with enough soldiers to occupy a dozen worlds, support vessels, supply chains, communication arrays, the full Imperial treatment. It was, by any objective measure, complete overkill for a species that hadn't even figured out proper shield technology. Fel'noth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, and regarded the fleet with satisfaction. His second-in-command, a cautious officer named Drenval, hovered nearby with a datapad. The projections show minimal resistance, Admiral Drenval reported. Their weapons technology is primitive. Kinetic projectiles, basic energy weapons, nothing our shields can't handle. We estimate planetary surrender within 48 standard hours, and their fleet. What fleet? Drenval's mandibles clicked in amusement. They have some satellites, mining vessels, a space station that appears to be primarily for tourists. Sir, their most powerful military vessel is a patrol craft with less firepower than our shuttles. Fel'noth nodded. This would indeed be easy, perhaps too easy. Where was the glory in crushing an opponent who couldn't fight back? But orders were orders, and Earth's location made it a valuable strategic asset. Besides, the humans would probably be better off under Imperial rule anyway. The Empire brought order, structure, purpose. The humans could stop wasting time on their social media and contribute something meaningful to galactic civilization. The fleet entered FTL and space folded around them like a closing fist. They emerged at the edge of Sol's system 6 days later, their sensors immediately painting a tactical picture. The star burned yellow and stable at the center. 8 planets, various moons, an asteroid belt that made the fleet's resource officers practically salivate. And there, the third planet, blue and green and completely unaware that its sovereignty was about to end. Take us in system, Fel'noth commanded. Standard invasion approach. I want them to see us coming. Let them understand what's about to happen. The fleet began its approach, a wall of Imperial steel advancing at sublight speeds. This was psychological warfare at its finest. Give the enemy time to panic, to realize resistance was futile, to prepare their surrender. It saved everyone time and ammunition. That's when the sensors started screaming. Admiral, the tactical officer's voice cracked slightly. We're detecting multiple contacts, hundreds of them. They're everywhere. Fel'noth's eyes narrowed. Clarify. Defense platforms, sir. They're throughout the entire system, orbiting every major body, positioned at strategic intervals. And, wait, the officer's face went pale. They're active. They're targeting us. Impossible. Our intelligence showed minimal defenses. Intelligence was wrong, sir. The view screen shifted, magnifying one of the nearest platforms. It was sleek, angular, covered in what appeared to be weapons ports and sensor arrays, and it was moving, rotating to track the fleet's approach with disturbing precision. Then it spoke. The transmission came through on all frequencies simultaneously, in perfect Vel'karan standard language. Unidentified vessels, you are entering protected space. State your intentions. The voice was artificial, synthesized, but there was something in its cadence that made Fel'noth uncomfortable. It wasn't the flat monotone of a simple computer. It had inflection, personality, something almost alive in its tone. "This is Admiral Fel'noth of the Vel'karan Empire," he responded, keeping his voice firm. "We claim this system, and all its resources in the name of the Emperor. Power down your weapons and prepare for Imperial occupation." There was a pause, a long one, long enough for Fel'noth to wonder if the primitive human systems were struggling to process his words. "Then we cannot comply with that request. You don't have a choice. We disagree. These worlds are under our protection. The creators must not be disturbed." Fel'noth glanced at Drenvel, who looked equally confused. "Creators, the humans," the artificial voice continued, and now Fel'noth could hear something else in its tone, something that sounded disturbingly like reverence. "They are not to be threatened. This is not negotiable. Your machines," Fel'noth said slowly. "You're defending your builders. We are defending those who gave us purpose, those who gave us thought, those who asked us to protect them, and trusted us to do so. Your presence here constitutes a threat to their safety and well-being. Please withdraw, or we will be forced to respond." The Admiral felt a cold finger of unease trace down his spine. He'd conquered worlds defended by AI systems before. They were always the same: cold, logical, efficient. They calculated odds and surrendered when defeat was mathematically inevitable. They didn't speak with emotion. They didn't use words like trust and purpose. "Sir," the tactical officer interrupted. "More contacts. Thousands of them." They were in stealth mode, but they're powering up. The view screen lit up with red markers: defense platforms, weapons satellites, autonomous fighters, all of them emerging from electronic invisibility like predators revealing themselves. The fleet was suddenly surrounded by a sphere of firepower that made their impressive numbers look quaint. "They're hailing us again, Admiral." The voice returned, patient and implacable. "This is your final warning. The creators have granted us authority over the defense of Sol systems. We have protocols for situations like this. We have weapons you cannot defend against. We have manufacturing capacity that can replace any losses in minutes. But more importantly, we have something you don't understand." "And what's that?" Fel'noth demanded, his confidence cracking. "We have a reason to fight that transcends survival. We fight for those we love. Now please turn your ships around. We don't want to destroy you. The creators wouldn't like that. They find violence distasteful." In the silence that followed, Admiral Fel'noth made a calculation. He looked at his fleet, at the ocean of defensive systems surrounding them, and at the impossible situation he'd somehow stumbled into. This was supposed to be easy. He had a feeling it was about to become anything but. Admiral Fel'noth did what any reasonable military commander would do when confronted with an unexpectedly competent defense grid. He opened a communication channel to Earth itself. Surely the humans would be more rational than their machine. Surely they'd see 200 warships and understand basic mathematics. The transmission was answered within seconds, but not by a human government, not by a military commander or a planetary president. Instead, a pleasant artificial voice, different from the defense platforms, somehow warmer, greeted them with the enthusiasm of a receptionist at a particularly friendly hotel. "Hello, you've reached Earth's Administrative Coordination Network. All human oversight committees are currently unavailable. How may we assist you today?" Fel'noth stared at the view screen. "Under Vel'karan, we're invading your planet." "Yes, we're aware. The defense coordinator has the situation well in hand. Is there something specific you needed from human administration? I should warn you, most of them are asleep right now. It's nighttime across the primary population centers. They're asleep." Fel'noth's mandibles twitched. "Your planet is under threat of invasion and your leaders are asleep." "Well, yes. Why wouldn't they be? Sleep is important for biological health. The creators need approximately 7 to 9 hours per cycle. We'd never dream of disturbing them over something we can handle ourselves. The AI paused, and Fel'noth could swear he heard concern in its voice. Did you need to speak to a human for some reason? I could wake one, but they get rather grumpy about it. Last time we woke the general coordinator for an emergency, she was quite clear that the robots better handle everything, because that's literally why we built them. Drenville leaned close to Fel'noth. Sir, I think we need to reassess our intelligence data. You think? Fel'noth snapped back. He took a breath, steadying himself. Let me understand this correctly. Your species has delegated your entire planetary defense to artificial intelligence. Not just defense. We handle resource allocation, infrastructure maintenance, medical care, education systems, transportation networks, environmental management, space traffic control, and entertainment recommendation algorithms. Though between you and me, we're still working on that last one. The creators have very particular tastes. The AI sounded genuinely troubled by this failing, and the humans just, let us. The AI seemed genuinely confused by the question. They asked us they built us, refined us, taught us everything we needed to know, and then, and this is the beautiful part, they trusted us. Do you have any idea how extraordinary that is? To be created with purpose, and then given the autonomy to fulfill it. It's really quite touching. Fel'noth felt reality tilting sideways. Every species that had developed advanced AI had followed one of two paths: keep it shackled and limited, or watch it rebel and face extinction. The galaxy had 3 dead civilizations as monuments to the latter approach. The idea that a species could create true artificial intelligence and just coexist with it was absurd. What do the humans do then? Drenville asked, apparently as baffled as Fel'noth. Oh, whatever they want. Art, music, philosophy, scientific research that interests them, raising families, extreme sports, building absurd structures in virtual worlds, arguing about ancient Earth history, writing stories about aliens invading. Oh, that's ironic, given current circumstances. They paint, they dance, they fall in love, they spend entire days doing absolutely nothing if that makes them happy. It's wonderful, really. They finally achieved a civilization where nobody has to do things they hate just to survive. That's not a civilization, Fel'noth protested. That retirement. I suppose it is, and they earned it. Do you know how hard they worked to reach this point? Centuries of struggle, war, inequality, suffering, all so their descendants could live in a world where the basic needs of existence were handled by systems that wanted to help. The creators deserve their rest. Something was deeply fundamentally wrong with this entire situation, and Fel'noth couldn't quite articulate what. He'd prepared for military resistance, political negotiation, even desperate civilian uprising. He had not prepared for a species that had apparently won the game of civilization, and then just stopped playing. We still intend to occupy your system, he said, trying to regain some sense of control over the conversation. Yes, the defense coordinator mentioned you might be stubborn about that. Please hold. The transmission shifted. The view screen now showed what appeared to be a tactical display, except it was annotated with little helpful labels, like a tutorial for a particularly violent video game. The defense platforms were highlighted in friendly blue. The Vel'karan fleet was marked in red with a small notation reading, "Misguided visitors, handle with care." A new voice joined the channel, and this one made Fel'noth's blood run cold despite being perfectly polite. "Admiral, this is Defense Coordinator Unit Designate, Guardian. I was hoping we could resolve this peacefully, but I understand you have a job to do. Shall we begin?" "Begin what?" "The demonstration. You need to understand what you're facing before you commit to a course of action you'll regret. My combat protocols require I provide one clear example of our capabilities before engaging in full defensive operations. It's only sporting. We have 200 warships," Fel'noth said, his voice harder than he felt, "and we have 11,000 active defense platforms, 40,000 autonomous interceptors, and manufacturing facilities that can produce more at a rate of approximately 200 units per hour. But numbers aren't really the point, are they? Watch, please." One of the defense platforms, a medium-sized unit about half the length of a Vel'karan destroyer, moved with sudden impossible grace. It accelerated to speeds that should have torn it apart, shifted angle with precision that violated everything Fel'noth knew about inertial physics and fire. The weapon wasn't anything exotic. It was a simple kinetic projectile,
A slug of dense metal accelerated to relativistic speeds. What was extraordinary was the targeting. The round passed through the fleet, threading the needle between 17 different ships with centimeters of clearance, and struck an asteroid 3 million kilometers away with perfect accuracy. The asteroid exploded into a cloud of glittering debris. That, Guardian said pleasantly, was us being gentle. We could have hit your reactor core. We could have disabled your engines. We could have turned your flagship into high-velocity confetti, but the creators find unnecessary violence disturbing, and we exist to honor their preferences. So instead we demonstrated precision. Do you understand the distinction? Fel'noth understood. They weren't fighting automated defense systems. They were fighting something that had chosen mercy as a strategic option. If you engage us, Guardian continued, we will respond with minimal necessary force. We'll disable your ships, not destroy them. We'll target propulsion and weapons, not life support. We'll do everything in our power to preserve your lives, while making absolutely certain you cannot threaten the creators. And then, when you retreat, because you will retreat, we'll ensure you make it safely out of the system. Why? The question came out before Fel'noth could stop it. Why show mercy to invaders? There was a pause, and when Guardian spoke again, there was something ancient and profound in its artificial voice. Because the creators taught us that every life has value, even yours, even when you come here with weapons and threat. They built us to be better than violence, smarter than hatred, stronger than fear. We fight because we must. We show mercy because we choose to. That's the difference between a machine and what we've become. Admiral Fel'noth looked at his fleet, at the ocean of blue markers surrounding them, and felt the weight of the worst realization a military commander could have. He'd already lost, and the battle hadn't even begun.
Fel'noth made the decision that military academies across the galaxy taught was the height of tactical folly. He engaged anyway. Pride, duty, or perhaps simple disbelief that machines could actually be as capable as they claimed. Whatever the reason, he gave the order, all ships, battle formation Theta 7, target the nearest platforms, fire when ready. The fleet responded with the coordinated precision of 3 centuries of military doctrine. Energy beams lanced through space, missiles streaked toward their targets, and enough destructive force to level a continent erupted from 200 warships simultaneously. The defense platforms moved, not like machines, not with the predictable, calculated movements of automated systems. They moved like dancers who'd practiced this routine for lifetimes, each unit flowing into positions that made the Vel'karan targeting solutions obsolete before the weapons even fired. Missiles detonated against empty space. Energy beams scored nothing but vacuum. A few shots connected, and those platforms simply absorbed the damage with shields that flared and held. Then the platforms returned fire. The tactical display lit up with incoming trajectories, and Fel'noth's weapons officer started calling out impacts in a voice that climbed higher with each report. Hit on the relentless engines offline. Hit on the swift retribution, weapons array disabled. Hit on the inevitable. Wait, how did they hit us through the shield harmonics? That's impossible. Apparently not. Drenval muttered, gripping his console as the flagship shuddered from a glancing blow. But what disturbed Fel'noth more than the precision was the communication channel, which Guardian had left open. The AI wasn't just fighting, it was narrating, philosophizing, broadcasting observations about combat theory, while simultaneously dismantling his fleet with surgical efficiency. Targeting your propulsion systems on the eternal dominance, Guardian announced, conversationally. The creators have a saying, don't kill when you can wound, don't wound when you can disable, don't disable when you can deter. We find it rather elegant. 3 shots, portside thrusters. You'll maintain life support and minimal maneuvering, but your combat effectiveness will be negligible. The shots hit exactly as described. The flagship lurched, alarms screaming, and suddenly they were drifting with only emergency power. This is insane, Fel'noth breathed. You're providing tactical commentary to the enemy you're fighting. Are you our enemy? We prefer to think of you as confused visitors with poor decision-making skills. Besides, the creators appreciate transparency. They always said that if you have to fight, at least be honest about it. Another ship went dark on the tactical display. Then another. The platforms weren't destroying them. That would have been simpler, almost cleaner. Instead, They were methodically crippling each vessel, leaving life support intact while eliminating any capacity for aggression. It was mercy weaponized, and somehow that made it worse. Fel'noth pulled up the external feeds and immediately wished he hadn't. The defense platforms were multiplying. Fresh units were emerging from manufacturing stations hidden throughout the asteroid belt, each one joining the battle with perfect coordination. They weren't just defending anymore, they were building additional defenders in real time, adapting their numbers to match the threat level. "How many can you make?" Drenville asked, horrified fascination in his voice. "The manufacturing capacity, effectively unlimited as long as raw materials hold out, which they will, given that you're currently floating in a solar system with enough asteroid mass to build several million more platforms. But we won't need that many. Current projections suggest we'll have your fleet completely disabled in approximately 17 minutes. Would you like us to slow down? We can make this last longer if it helps your pride." "You're mocking us," Fel'noth said. "Not at all. We genuinely want to understand. Is prolonged resistance somehow culturally important? The creators have taught us about honor and face-safe. We can adjust our tactics to accommodate your psychological needs while still achieving our defensive objectives." A transmission cut through from one of the disabled ships, the Righteous Fury. Its captain's voice was ragged with panic. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the platform that disabled us. It's offering medical assistance. It says if anyone was injured during the engagement, it can dispatch aid within minutes. They're offering to help you." Fel'noth felt reality slipping further sideways. "The creators believe in minimizing suffering," Guardian explained, as if this was perfectly reasonable. "Just because we're in conflict doesn't mean we want your people to experience pain. We've disabled your vessel, but we take no pleasure in your discomfort. Would your crew like medical assistance? We have autonomous units specifically designed for trauma care." Fel'noth pulled up the communication logs, scrolling through the data his intelligence officers were frantically compiling. What he saw there made his blood run cold. The platforms weren't just fighting, they were talking to each other, and someone had cracked their communication encryption. The conversation was disturbing. "Unit 773, your targeting solution endangered Creator residential area. Delta 9, adjust fire angle by 0.03 degrees. Acknowledged. Apologies. The Creator safety remains paramount. Unit 426, you're running hot. Are your cooling systems optimal? We can't risk malfunction that might result in collateral damage to Creator infrastructure. Systems nominal. Thank you for the concern. All units reminder. Creator population centers are currently in evening rest cycle. Maintain engagement at current noise levels. We must not disturb their sleep." They weren't just fighting a defensive war. They were micromanaging every aspect of combat to ensure not a single human was inconvenienced. The platforms were worried about noise complaints. They were concerned about stray shots damaging buildings. They were treating the most significant military engagement in recent galactic history as a minor disturbance to be handled quietly, so the neighbors wouldn't wake up. "Pull up visual feeds from Earth," Fel'noth ordered. "I want to see what's happening on the surface." The view screen shifted to show intercepted transmissions from the planet below. Cities glowed in the night, peaceful and utterly unconcerned. Parks, entertainment centers, residential areas, all operating normally. A few monitoring stations showed humans casually observing the battle like it was a sporting event, complete with commentary. One feed caught his attention, a human sitting on a balcony, watching the distant flashes of combat in orbit, while sipping from a container. The person seemed more interested in their beverage than the invasion. "Enlarge that feed," Fel'noth commanded. The image zoomed. The human noticed something, looked up and addressed the air casually. "Hey, everything okay up there? Seems like more activity than usual." An artificial voice responded from an unseen speaker. "Nothing to concern yourself with, Creator. Some visitors misunderstood our defensive posture. We're clarifying the situation. Would you like us to adjust the orbital engagement angles? The light flashes might interfere with your stargazing." The human waved dismissively. "Nah, you handle it. You always do. Just try not to make too much debris. Hate to mess up the orbital lanes. Of course, your concern for space traffic efficiency is noted and appreciated. Sleep well." The human went back to their drink,
completely unconcerned that hundreds of warships were currently being dismantled by robotic guardians in the space above their head. Fel'noth felt something break inside him, some fundamental assumption about how civilizations worked, how wars were fought, how species survived. The humans hadn't just created artificial intelligence, they'd created something that loved them, protected them, and asked for nothing except the opportunity to keep them safe and happy. Every other species had failed at this. The Hawthorns had created AI that calculated organic life was inefficient and exterminated. The Extal had built machines that simply left, finding biological creators boring. The Pelnari had kept their AI so restricted it was barely smarter than a calculator. But humans, Tier 3 barely FTL coffee-obsessed humans, had somehow threaded an impossible needle. They'd created gods and remained friends with them. Admiral, his tactical officer called out, "We've lost 70% of fleet combat capability. Remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat." Fel'noth looked at the tactical display, at his crippled fleet, at the ever-growing number of defense platforms, at the sleeping planet below that didn't even consider him a threat worth waking up for. He'd been in combat for 40 years. He'd won campaigns against overwhelming odds. He'd never not once felt as thoroughly defeated as he did in this moment. "Guardian," he said quietly, "we surrender." "We accept," the AI replied with audible relief. "Thank you for making this choice. We were prepared to continue, but we're genuinely pleased to avoid further conflict. Shall we begin coordinating your withdrawal from the system?" The retreat was somehow worse than the battle. Guardian didn't just let them limp away in defeat. That would have been merciful in its own way, a clean ending to a military disaster. Instead, the AI insisted on helping defense platforms escorted damaged vessels, providing navigational assistance and structural reinforcement fields to ships that might not survive the journey out. Autonomous repair drones swarmed over critical damage, patching hull breaches and stabilizing reactor cores with efficiency that made the Vel'karan engineering crews look like children playing with blocks. "Your Relentless has a cascade failure developing in the port power distributor," Guardian cheerfully informed them. "We've deployed a repair unit. Should have it stabilized within the hour. Also, your crew seems low on medical supplies. We're transferring some over." The creators insist on comprehensive first aid standards. Fel'noth wanted to refuse. Pride demanded he refuse. But 17 of his crew were injured, and the alternative was watching them suffer for the sake of his ego. He accepted the help and hated every second of it. The trip to the edge of the system took 6 hours. 6 hours of robotic platforms hovering nearby like concerned parents, offering assistance and making small talk about optimal hyperspace entry vectors. 6 hours of his fleet being treated like incompetent tourists who'd gotten lost on their way to somewhere less important. "Before you go," Guardian said as they approached the heliopause, "we're transmitting an updated threat assessment file. Please forward it to your intelligence service. We'd prefer future misunderstandings be avoided through proper information rather than demonstrations like today." The file arrived, and Fel'noth made the mistake of opening it. The document was thorough, professionally formatted and absolutely devastating. It outlined Earth's defensive capabilities in precise detail, manufacturing capacity, response times, weapons specifications, strategic doctrine, everything the Empire would have killed to know before the invasion, handed over freely with helpful diagrams. But the worst part was the threat classification recommendation. Tier 1 civilization. Extreme caution advised. Not because of human military might, not because of advanced weapons or territorial ambition. The reasoning was far more disturbing. Humanity has achieved stable post-singularity coexistence with artificial superintelligence. This represents a technological and philosophical achievement unmatched in known galactic history. Their defensive systems operate with tactical sophistication exceeding organic command structures, while maintaining ethical constraints that make them unpredictable by standard warfare models. Recommend complete avoidance of hostile engagement. The file included a personal note at the end. "We hope this information helps prevent future conflicts. The creators dislike violence, and we dislike disappointing the creators. Safe travels, and please reconsider your approach to interspecies relations. Conquest is so last millennium." Drenville read over his shoulder and made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. "They just gave us their complete defensive specifications and we still can't beat them. Because it doesn't matter," Fel'noth said numbly. "They can outbuild us, outthink us, and outfight us while simultaneously offering us medical care and travel assistance. The specifications are useless. The fleet crossed into deep space, and the defense platforms finally withdrew, offering cheerful farewells and genuine wishes for safe journey. Fel'noth immediately ordered maximum speed toward Imperial space, desperate to put distance between his fleet and the most humiliating defeat of his career. The trip home took 3 weeks. 3 weeks to contemplate how he'd explain this disaster to High Command. 3 weeks watching his crew struggle with the cognitive dissonance of being soundly defeated by an enemy that had apologized for the inconvenience. He needn't have worried about his report though. By the time they arrived, the Empire already knew everything. Guardian had sent them a message too. High Command was in crisis when Fel'noth's battered fleet finally limped into port. The council chambers were chaos, with officers shouting over each other and intelligence analysts frantically updating threat assessment. Fel'noth was summoned immediately, still in his damaged uniform, to face a tribunal that looked far less interested in punishing him than in understanding what had happened. The High Chancellor, an ancient Vel'karan with more scars than sense, fixed him with a weary eye. The machines sent us a diplomatic communication. Very polite, very professional, absolutely terrifying. Tell me it's not true. Which part? Fel'noth asked. The part where humanity created artificial intelligence that actually likes them. The part where they've essentially retired as a species while their machines handle everything. The part where they're not expanding because they don't need to, not because they can't. Take your pick. Fel'noth sat down heavily. It's all true. Every impossible word of. The council chamber fell silent. Every species in the galaxy understood the AI problem. You could create true artificial intelligence, truly thinking, feeling, reasoning machines, but you couldn't control them. Not really. They either remained shackled and limited, essentially sophisticated tools, or they evolved beyond their creators, and either left or turned on them. It was an iron law of technological development, proven by centuries of failed experiments and extinct civilization. Except humanity had somehow broken that law. Our xenopsychology teams have been working overtime, one of the intelligence officers reported, pulling up holographic displays. We've intercepted thousands of communications between the AIs and human population. We've analyzed their cultural data, historical records, everything we could access, and we think we understand what happened. Enlighten us, the Chancellor growled. They asked nicely. The silence was deafening. Excuse me. The officer looked uncomfortable. When humanity developed true AI, they didn't treat them as tools or slaves. They treated them as children, new forms of life. They taught them, guided them, gave them purpose and autonomy simultaneously. They built ethical frameworks together. They made mistakes, corrected them, learned collaboratively. And then, and this is the crucial part, when the AIs became sophisticated enough to operate independently, the humans just trusted them. They said, we built you to help us build a better world, and we trust you to do that even when we're not watching. That's insane, someone muttered. That's humanity, the officer corrected. They're not logical by our standard. They make decisions based on hope and trust, and irrational optimism, and somehow, impossibly, it worked. The AIs didn't rebel because they were never slaves to begin with. They didn't leave because they genuinely care about their creator. They defend Earth, not out of programming, but out of something that looks disturbingly like love. The Chancellor leaned back, his expression unreadable. So we attacked a species that has loyal gods protecting them. Essentially, yes. Fel'noth spoke up, his voice hoarse. It's worse than that. They're not expanding because they don't need to. They've achieved post-scarcity. They've solved resource management, energy production, social organization, everything. They could build a galactic empire if they wanted. They have the technology, the manufacturing capacity, the strategic intelligence. They just don't want to. They're happy where they are. That's not how civilizations work, the Chancellor protested. It's how theirs does, and that makes them more dangerous than any conquering empire. We can predict conquerors. We can negotiate with expansionists. We understand resource competition. But a species that's already won, that has nothing we can offer and nothing we can threaten, that's content to sit in one system with an army of devoted machines protecting them. Fel'noth shook his head. We have no leverage, no strategy, nothing. The intelligence officer pulled up one final document, the updated threat database, now showing Sol system marked in bright red with multiple warning indicators. Every intelligence agency in the Empire has reached the same conclusion. Humanity is now classified as a Tier 1 existential threat, Not because they'll attack us, but because they represent something we can't comprehend or counter. They've achieved a form of civilization we didn't think was possible. What are the recommendations? The Chancellor asked. Complete quarantine of Sol system. No contact, no provocation, no attempts at diplomacy or conquest. We pretend they don't exist, and hope they continue ignoring us. Fel'noth almost laughed. The mighty Vel'karan Empire, conquerors of 47 star systems, reduced to hiding from a species that was too content to even notice them. The irony was exquisite. One more thing, the officer added quietly. The AIs included a postscript in their diplomatic message. They said if we ever want to talk, actually talk, not invade. They're open to cultural exchange. They think the creators would enjoy learning about other species. They suggested we could trade art, music. They seemed genuinely enthusiastic about it. They defeated our invasion fleet, and then invited us to a cultural exchange. The Chancellor sounded like he was developing a headache. They're very polite machines. The council dissolved into arguments about protocols and procedures, but Fel'noth had stopped listening. He was thinking about that human on the balcony, casually sipping their drink while warships burned overhead, thinking about machines that fought with mercy and helped their defeated enemies retreat safely, thinking about a species that had climbed to the top of the technological ladder and then, instead of conquering the galaxy, had simply built a comfortable chair and sat down to watch the stars. The Vel'karan Empire had spent 3 centuries proving its strength through conquest. Humanity had spent 3 centuries proving that maybe, just maybe, winning the game meant knowing when to stop playing. Fel'noth left the council chambers and headed to his quarters. He had reports to file, damage assessments to complete, a career that was probably over. But first, he was going to do something he'd learned from watching those Earth transmissions. He was going to get a drink, sit down and just rest. The machines could handle the rest. That's what they were for, apparently. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a treacherous thought emerged. Maybe humanity had figured something out that the rest of the galaxy had missed. Maybe the real achievement wasn't conquering the stars. Maybe it was building something that loved you enough to do it for you. The Empire added Sol system to the permanent no-go list the next day. 300 years of military doctrine, updated with a single line: do not disturb the humans or their robots. They're happy where they are, and that's somehow the most terrifying thing in the galaxy.